My first business I started at university was making mountain bike parts. You just shut up about Bike Club, I'll give you 50 grand. It was sort of this fear, stressful, the finance and building this business, remortgaged my flat. You should be able to pitch your business to raise small starting seed. This journey is so hard, and if you can't do that, I would question whether you should be doing that business. That's massive, that's much bigger than I realised. Pay Monthly Kids Bike came to be. This actually works, kids grow out of their bike. Basically hit product market fit. Founder is the first step on journey.
James has built a company called Bike Club. It's one of the largest rental biking networks globally. Hi James, it's a pleasure to have you on board with us today. Thank you for coming to London Business School.
Hi Abhinav, it's great to be here. I always love coming to LBS. I think MBA is a fantastic program. I'm really quite envious of you guys because I never did one. And I wish I had done one at some point.
Yeah, honestly, it's been fantastic, the program and the journey. And one of the big things that all of us aspire to be is someone like you, a founder who's started a business, who's come such a long way in terms of scaling. And all of us here through the medium of the podcast are super excited to sort of dig into learning more about how do you do it. It's like there's a real world out there where businesses are being built, and we would love to today just scratch your brains a little bit to know how far you've come and learn more about your journey today.
Yeah, I think you're all going to go further than me. I'm afraid you're probably all much smarter than me, but it's great to be here to talk about Bike Club, and let's see if we can learn a few bits and pieces from that journey.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started. First things, James, I think for those who don't know, James has built a company called Bike Club. It's one of the largest rental biking networks globally. And I would love to now hear directly from James what sort of early years look like and how it shaped you towards entrepreneurship.
I'll go back a bit and I'll sort of try and accelerate through it, because there's a bit of a sort of journey here, a bit of a story. My first business I started at university was making mountain bike parts. That's now pivoted into making office partitioning, and my friend who I set it up with is still running that, living a very good life in Cornwall and doing really, really well. But I realised I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was like, I'm going to go and train as an accountant. So I went and trained as an accountant at KPMG, spent a long time there, did lots of things. Anyway, I actually also stood for Parliament in 2015. That's a whole other story. But whilst I was doing that, I was like, I don't really know if I'm sure I want to go off on a partner and do that sort of stuff, right? But also I realised I kind of perhaps didn't want to do politics as well. And I was sort of like, I really enjoyed starting a business. I really enjoyed all of that. And so I started reading books on how to start a business, all the sort of startup books you read, and it was really fun. And then I was chatting to my brother, who is a conservation scientist. He's the opposite of the things. He's lived in every continent of the world. He's done all sorts of amazing things in his life. And I was thinking, how are we going to do something about climate change when all we want to do is consume? So how's that going to work? He's like, well, you should look at the circular economy, because that's the point of sharing goods. We effectively get the same utility economically, but we use less, we consume less stuff. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I got really interested in this concept of lending things, not money, that you then share between people. And that's sort of how I sort of started iterating on this idea. I was a really keen cyclist at the time, because you'd have thought, kids pay monthly kids bikes. Surely, like, you've had kids and you've seen a problem in the market. Nope, did not have kids at all. Didn't actually know anything about having kids at the time.
Okay.
And I was like, right, I'm going to do a bike club where we have premium triathlon bikes that we share between people, like a supercar club.
Right.
And it's like, so I sort of wrote this thing down, this is modeling, and I was like pitching it to people, and it just didn't work. Like the initial point was there's no product market fit, because that's passion as a service, and people with their passion products, and we all have passions in life, right? Like lunches, cars, I don't know, clothing,
yeah.
And you want to own it, right? Because it's this thing you want to own. So I was like, oh, that's not work. And I was looking at the Mintel report. Mintel's a market research company. I realized this big segment on the circle, like the circle of the bike market, saying kids bikes. I said, hold on. That's massive. That's much bigger than I realised. That tan looks juicy.
Right.
And that's how Pay Monthly Kids Bikes came to be. I was like, oh, this actually works. Kids grow out of their bikes. And I remember growing up, I'm the youngest of three boys.
Right.
I've got two older brothers. I still remember, my parents promised me a new bike for my 11th birthday.
Right.
I got a hand-me-down from my brothers,
no.
right? Well, it's fine, because it inspired me to do Bike Club. So, my parents.
Absolutely.
So that's not great. I didn't love that experience as a child. And so I sort of worked on that, and it immediately clicked. And I think I got very lucky in that first iteration basically hit product market fit, which I think as a founder is the first step on journey. It's that key, that's the only thing that matters. And you can read multiple blogs from multiple bigger founders than me who've written all about that. I think that's the thing I'm going to probably talk about a bit today.
Would love to hear more. a lot of the times I have these conversations with founders and I try to understand the inspiration for starting. And I actually value what you just shared about how sometimes you observe a gap in the market from the feelings or from the problems you face yourself personally. And in your case, and you would assume that as a parent, you felt there's a gap and hence you may have started, but you clearly saw an opportunity and you went right after it. So tell me the first 30 days look like.
Chaos. I think I was a big fan of lean startup theory. I think I'd probably be less of a fan of that now as I've sort of got more experience. I think lean startup theory works, but it can create a lot of long-term problems in the business. I'd say the last 3 years we probably spent dealing with some of those long-term problems that lean startup theory might have caused.
Yeah.
But that's another story, and we can get to that maybe. But we're an FCA regulated business because it is a leftist. So we sort of had to firstly get a credit license and do all that. And I basically did that off the side of my desk and made the application and somehow got granted one. Then we sort of started off with a very basic Squarespace website. I'm coming at this with no e-commerce experience, right? And you're like, I just didn't really understand how any of that stuff worked. A little bit of social media marketing experience from the politics stuff and sort of understanding how you drive traffic to websites, but not really understanding how conversion roles work and brand awareness. What was all this stuff, right? I'm coming at it from a very quite Puritan finance sort of background today. And I think weirdly, that not stuff I didn't know meant I was probably overconfident, right? So we sort of went into this we'll work it out, it's going to be fine. Lots of positivity. I mean, I was in my 20s, so I was probably feeling a bit more sort of, I don't know, less grizzled by life at that point. But yeah, so we sort of started out and we were like, okay, right, so we're going to buy some bikes. And that was actually quite hard because you had to persuade supplier to sell you some bikes. So anyway, did that eventually. Weirdly, my first supplier now works with me at Bike Club. And now leads the side of the business there, which is kind of fun story there.
Yeah, it's a sign of great retention.
Yeah,
and your early relations have, stayed off.
Left his supplier, go work for us. It's been really fun. Yes, we did that. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll set this website up. We'll then launch it. We'll put some new social media advertising out there. Back then, it was Facebook was the only place to go, right? Instagram was something like that.
But speaking 2016, 2017.
This is 16, 17. Yeah, probably 17. I know, maybe back in the 16. Yeah. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, almost a decade.
So, yeah, we sort of started then. We said, right, if we sell 100 bikes by Christmas, we're going to quit our jobs and go and do this full time. We sold 130, 140. Yeah, that's amazing. That's super cool.
In how much time?
In 2-3 months.
Okay.
But that was the Christmas trading window, which is quite famous retail in the UK. Yol knows what comes, and we didn't write that yet. But the problem was that I think I only had £20,000 worth of startup capital,
right?
And 140 bikes was not £20,000. And actually, it turned out I needed a lot more money, so we maxed out credit cards, did all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I went down that whole road, which was a proper risk-on moment.
And this is all your personal savings.
Oh yeah, all my personal savings, and then also remortgaged my flat at the time. Okay, so yeah, I went really deep, and then so we sort of did that for the first year. And so I did side hustle it. I was still working at KPMG, doing that in the day, and in the evening doing this. My co-founder left her job earlier so she could work on it full time, and then we just we ground on basically. But the problem was then it was I did not have any understanding of how capital markets work for startup businesses, right? So we were just talking about your background, about this: pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, C, all this stuff. Yeah, I kind of missed that part of the process. So I was I didn't really understand how to do that, and also I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I was only quite a decent salary at KPMG at the time. And I was like, do I really want to quit this? It was sort of this fear, this is really stressful, the finance and building this business. And I was just I don't want to do this, don't want to do this. And then basically I was walking in Cornwall, again with my first business partner. We were walking on the coast and the cliffs. And he was like, Led Jones, if you just shut up about Bike Club, I'll give you 50 grand to get going. So he did that. And then a couple of other friends and family came in and did a bit more. And so we raised our first round. Yeah, then I was able to take a bit of time, paid time off from KPMG, sort of close that sort of first round. And so, then that's sort of how we got going. And in that, I brought on a chap called Mike Balfour, who's been my chairman. He's now stepping down to Ned as well. But he's the founder of Fitness First. So he came in the proper entrepreneur
Fantastic.
So yeah, a bit of lucky sort of, putting it all together, if you see what I mean.
There's always a question around that switch from knowing that you want to like build something to then going all in. And I believe what you just shared was the all in moment where you knew that, the business requires more legs and all your time and resources. But you also, at that time, when once you got that extra support to raise the initial pre-seed, as you call it, the early capital to then go in, would you advise for entrepreneurs in general to then sort of always have some like sort of backing to know when to commit full time so that you don't lose what you have in hand?
It's really difficult, right? Because I'm going through the same transition. Right? I'm moving to a NED role,
Right.
Bike Club, and that's been quite a natural development for where I've been. I've CEO of what we just alluded to, a decade, right? But
Right.
I kind of forgot about the first 2 years. I'm moving to this NED role, and I'm exploring this new idea in nursery childcare financing, okay?
Like,
I'm doing it with another second-time founder. He exited his business 18 months ago. And it's quite interesting because we're being much more less visionary, if you like, more gritty on like, when are we going all in on this plan? I think when you're a bit older and you've got a bit more experience, you're able to generate income from perhaps other part-time roles. So how do I say this? Effectively, your money you earn per hour is higher, right? So you're able to kind of do that side of things. But then when you're younger, I've got 3 kids now, right? And you haven't got the commitment. So actually you've got a lower cost base. So it's easier to make that jump. I think though, what we did, refinancing, going up to the hill, all of that stuff, I think you should be cautious about doing that.
Right.
Unless you have like deep conviction in unless you can really pitch it, because realistically you should be able to, if you're in London, certainly where there's a lot of capital for this type of thing,
Right.
and the UK has EIS, SEIS, all of that stuff. I think some of the rules have changed recently around that, but you should be able to pitch your business to someone to be able to raise some kind of small starting seed. And if you can't do that, I would question whether you should be doing that business, right? I know it sounds tough and often like it's about network, trying to meet the investors. But I think that this journey is so hard. You've got to have such a high level of resilience that if you're not going to get out there and try and find investors and meet people, you're probably not going to get there, right? So I think if you should be able to do this pitch and build this whole thing up, if you see what I mean.
That's super valuable advice. I remember once in my early VC days, one of the founders who I met, in fact, shared something kind of similar, telling me that when you start entrepreneurship and you want to sort of go and build, like it's a one-way route because there's no promises that your first model is when you achieve product market fitment. It's a journey of figuring out what's fitting and what's not, but it's a one-way traffic road. Like you just have to go in with a 100% mindset to know that you're building and there's no way out of this. That's super, super valuable. Which makes me wonder, you've embarked upon the journey, you've got the capital, you've got the confidence to now go full time, full into it. It's never a one-man journey. You always require a team to support you with your ideas, with your execution. How did you go about finding your first few team members who helped you sort of generate and, scale the business from there on? Who were the first folks and how do you find them?
Wow. Yeah, that's I just think back to Tom Hunt, our first ever employee. There you go. I still remember his name. Lost touch with the chap. But I think this is also key in entrepreneurship. You've got to be able to persuade people to join you on that journey. If you're not doing that, you're not building a business, because you're absolutely right. You cannot do these things without the leverage of other people. Now, of course, AI now means that you can start a business and you need probably less people to actually do the initial builds and all that sort of stuff, which is great because it makes it easier. You don't have to worry about people's salaries and stuff. I suppose the first person we hired is a kind of marketing intern, but just general helping and all sorts of stuff. And we didn't really have much budget, so we couldn't really do proper hires at that point. But then once we started raising some money, we started being able to attract people. And I think that I kind of quickly learned was really about idiosyncratic talent, is the phrase I use, right? So you're trying to find people who often wouldn't fit in perhaps a sort of LBS or KPMG type of environment, right? They're not necessarily, they can be a bit, I don't know how to put it, odd.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and those are the people you can attract, right? Because actually they're going to firstly probably go, yeah, I kind of like the flexibility and freedom it gives me to express myself in a startup environment, which you don't get at an institution. And then they also go, you as a founder have to be able to get the best out of them as well. And if you can find that, like there's one of my chaps, I've worked with him since 21, and he joined us when he was doing his legal conversion course. And it was like, he joined us in like customer service, and he was like, you were like, okay, we're going to help you, and you can come work for us part-time, and then we get training contracts, so you could move off. Anyway, he then ended up staying for 4 years, has moved up the company, is now like number 2 in operations.
Right.
And now he's like, I'm going to go off and get a training contract, and Clifford Chance have just hired. So
Interesting.
he's now off to go
Nice,
do
yeah.
this. Because he was quite young at the time he joined us. He's
Yeah.
26 or something now. So, it's been amazing working with him, and like all that sort of seeing that talent come through and helping like grow that, work with that. But being able to identify that, I think, is quite key, and being able to spot sort of the warning signs of somebody who's high quality can be really valuable to your team.
Also, no, interesting. In every journey of building, would you feel that there's many ways to incentivize the early employees to come join your team? Sometimes the incentivization could mean offering equity, because they need to really believe in your mission, and they need to want to have that ownership to build alongside you, because the journey is going to be really hard.
Yeah, I think obviously like different levels, you have different equity levels, right? I think there's quite a lot of stuff. There's quite a lot of guidance online as to what you should be offering people and how that works. But the funny thing about equity, it's not really that valuable until sort of year 5, 6. And because obviously you want to have you want to be giving it to people so you can keep them tied into the journey as it goes along. But on the other side of things, but that's not immediate, and that you can't go home to your husband or your wife and say, "Darling, I've got this equity piece of paper. Let's go on holiday." But it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there's other stuff you can do, like flexibility, right? We could offer Bike Club. We're a family company. We rent kids' bikes out. All of our members are parents, so that's it.
Yeah.
And so why are we going to try and force parents at Bike Club to have to work hours that are completely inconvenient around the kid? And so a couple of people are parents. And it's like, I need to go off and pick up my kids. That's absolutely fine. You can do that. We'll have different working hours there.
Right.
And that sort of thing is super attractive, and it's super hard for other employers to replicate it. Another thing we did was work from anywhere in August. So then we had various team members from various countries based in London, all quite a diverse team.
Right.
And people be like, oh yeah, that's great. I get to go and spend the summer in Albania or whatever it is. And they go and do that. They go and spend time at home, love to see their parents, and then realize it's actually quite nice not living near my parents. Then come back to London and really happy and spend the rest of the year in London. It's great. You've sort of got that.
Yeah.
I think those are the sort of things you can do. I think and they become like super helpful benefits for someone working for you. And then people become pretty sticky because they can't find the same deal at the next company, even if the next company is offering £10,000 more.
Yeah.
The tax rates and stuff, that's not actually huge, and it's sort of like I think that's one of the things we were quite strong on at Bike Club.
No, makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. 2 years, going back in time, you've been setting up operations. What did the Bike Club shape into being in the first 2 years? So would love to know more about the model in itself. How did it work at the very core of it? Would love for the audience to understand more about, whoever's not used the service. What did it look like in terms of the value chain once an order was placed? And then we would use that as a premise to learn more about the early unit economics. Like, this understanding the subscription model and how it works would be very, very valuable.
Yeah, okay, so I think I didn't know what it was called at the time, but we used to use drop shipping, right?
Yes, it's still common, yeah.
And so, it's like early days, we would hold no stock whatsoever. We'd get an order, and then we'd basically every day we'd write up an Excel spreadsheet, or Google Sheet actually it was the time, and we'd send that to our supplier and say, these are the bikes we need to send out. We had a deal with them. They'd build those bikes and send them out, right? And so that's sort of how it worked for a number of years. Problem we ran into is the supplier kept on running out of stock. Stock is like a huge challenge in this business.
Right.
COVID, there was no stock, and now there's too much stock, and then there's not enough stock in the right areas, and it's not enough stock in the right countries now. It's like, really painful. Anyway, that's still a challenge we're solving. But in those early days, that's what we're doing. And then someone would say, I want to cancel, I want to exchange my bikes, I want an exercise item. So there'd be, because it's early days, we didn't have any second-hand stock. We used stock, we didn't very much of it. We would then send out the next new bike to them and collect that bike and bring it back to us. They was like, where are we going to keep this bike? We live in a third floor flat in Batter. It's just not going to work. And so then my mate was like, we can use my garage if you fix the garage door. So we went off and fixed the garage door and used that as our first place to drop it all off. And then we had a big yellow storage unit. That was terrible. But then eventually we have like a bike mechanic would come over, like a mobile mechanic we'd pay to come over and sort of do the bikes once a week or something, because there wasn't enough throughput. Roll that all the way forwards, right, through 9 iterations of attempts. We're now in a very different place. So what we found is that we became too big for the market.
Right.
So we have to hold our own bikes. We also have our our own supply now as well. So we not only buy bikes off brands, we also have our own brands as well. So we outsource manufacturing to Bangladesh, Thailand, and do all of that. Those bikes, they're coming on 6 to 9 month lead times, right? So you've got quite a long supply chain. You've got a
69 months.
6 to 9 months, yeah. Because bikes is just crazy. Anyone who works in fashion and stuff, they just never believe you until they come and look at the bike industry and they go, oh yeah, actually, I see what you mean. It is actually completely archaic.
Wow. Okay.
Someone explained it to me as it's like the car industry in the 70s. So yeah, that's bikes, right?
Right.
There's a whole nother podcast on why it does that.
Sure.
You order these bikes, they come in, and then we house them. They actually get built now in fully built in Bangladesh and Thailand, and they then come and sit in a 3PL, right? So we outsourced all our dispatch and all that to 3PL to much more efficient, try to replicate that in the market, of course, it's worth it. And then we have 2 sites, one in Berlin, one just in Essex, where we do our bike refurbishment. And so now we have like teams of about 50 to 20 people in both countries who are just every day refurbishing bikes that are coming through. Now, how does it work? So now Bike Club is probably renting about 80% refurbished bikes in the UK.
Right.
And in Germany it's probably like 60% or maybe 50%. Germany's still growing a fleet. It's growing very, very fast. It's a very fast growing business. And so with us in the UK, though, effectively a bike goes out to a customer, they tend to hold on to it for about 15 months, right? Was the average.
Okay.
And then the kid grows out of it, and then they exchange the next size, and we get that bike back. It takes about 3-4 weeks, well, 2 weeks perhaps, to come back to us. It gets refurbished, and then it gets made available again,
Right.
and then it gets back out again. And so, in a way, I mean, one of my investors crudely puts it as, it's like you're selling a bike 3 times. It's not quite right.
Right.
So, but fundamentally, if you thought about it as a linear sales retail, you're selling that bike for £300, £40, that's sort of going rate for the bikes we're using.
Yeah.
Whereas we hold on to a buyer for 5 years, you're doing about 120 quid a year. So, you're getting to that kind of level of £6 or revenue of that bike. That's sort of the delta there, and you can see how you can make quite good money on that.
But
The other side of it, though, I just going to keep going because I also didn't know this about e-commerce frequency. I said, what's frequency? This is this like proper account.
right, the number of turns, the number of times
Yeah, and
you
how
keep
many
using it
people
on.
to come back, and what's the CAC to LTV, all that stuff. It's like, oh, right, now I get it, right? So Bike Club is wonderful because basically once we embed with a family, we're their partner, and we genuinely what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
It's what we are trying to do. We're trying to help your family have a really easy, hassle-free journey through cycling. And so you have people staying with us for, well, you go 10 years. You have people staying with us for like 8 years because they effectively just cycle through the whole every size, and they keep going. And so you can have really high LTVs on these customers.
Right.
And that's super. So it means when you're looking at these CAC to LTV, or LTV CAC ratio, sorry, you're getting really high 5, 6, 7, 8, 9s. If so,
Really?
yeah, but
That's fantastic.
it is fantastic, but you've also got to then remember this is a lending business, right?
Right, yeah.
So you're having to say the challenge you've got is your weighted average loan length.
Yeah.
It's pretty long in Bike Club,
Right.
So your payback period, if you like, and that's where you end up with a balance sheet which you've got to start managing properly,
Right.
and that's where we probably have had some tricky bits.
Yeah.
But then finally, so we got to a place where I think we're in a better place. It's just trying to, a fast-growing, balance sheet intensive business is really hard to fund for, right?
Interesting. So quick question there. How did you, talking about customer churn or long-term value, the lifetime value for customers, how did you build that pull initially with the customers? Was it get-go that, the service was loved from day one and you sort of like upgraded that here and there? Or did you have to re-architect the model at any point to fix that, to get to that 8 to 9x LTV to CAC?
This is a weird thing. In the UK, the model hasn't really changed that much. In
Right.
Germany, we brought in a minimum contract length.
Right.
Germany's hyper seasonal. They're no unlike you, and if you travel there, you'll see why. It's pretty cold in winter.
Right.
So people don't tend to buy bikes or ride bikes in winter.
Right.
So we have a 9-month minimum contract length, which kind of the German consumer gets. This is where there's the point of this is we're there for you all the time. We can't have this kind of you rent over the summer and then send it back to us. That's a different model, and
Right.
we need to charge you more for that. We did the modelling on it. It was like we wouldn't just need to charge you more. We need to charge you a lot more. We want that flexibility.
Yeah.
So we actually don't offer it. We're like,
Right.
maybe we will do one day. I don't know. So Germany, you look at it like 2 weeks ago, you're doing like 5-6 sales a day.
Right.
I think yesterday we did 85 you join us, right? Because the
Okay.
weather has changed 20 degrees in
Right.
those 2 weeks.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
it was,
season dependent.
it was minus 10, now
Yeah.
it's like 20.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Right.
quite, or 15 or
Right.
so it's super seasonal. They're there. UK though, when it's more temperate here, but also people just they're much sort of they're different. It's a different approach to cycling in the UK. So they stay a bit longer. So we haven't needed to put in a minimum contract length right now. So it's pretty flexible, which feels really good to parent. Means they can take a punt on you, so to speak, and they can take a risk, do we say?
Interesting.
And that's worked pretty well for us now.
Interesting. Good you brought up Germany, because I did wonder, as a business, you're doing well in the UK in the first couple of years. And then I believe around, post-COVID or around COVID, it was around 2022 that you decided to sort of enter the Germany market. My question then comes back to why the Germany market first? When you're planning to expand as a founder, what are some of the criteria you looked at that you wanted to pick a specific market? Did you have to, as we heard a little bit around your contract sizes, were there any other things that you had to think about while you entered the new market?
Yeah, I mean, look, international expansion is an amazingly unknown place, right? So, I mean, it's funny because I've got experience doing it 2-3 countries now. And I'd still say every time you go into a new country, something new comes up. So,
Right.
But why Germany? So I remember we did our Series B in 22. And one of the things we had to do for our Series B was commercial due diligence. And there's this page in the CDD report that talks about total addressable market.
Yes.
And this is something I've always been worried about, biker.
Right.
I was looking at it, and they kind of came back with I think, dare I say it, CDD tends to always come back positive. So they came out like a positive review.
Okay.
But the point was, they said, if you need to believe these things to believe the total addressable market numbers we have for the UK. And I was going through it, and I was like, this is massively sensitive. If I've got any of these things wrong, we're looking at a really different tab. How do we fix this? It was like, well, we fix it by adding 85 million more consumers onto the platform. And then if one of these things is wrong, it's kind of okay. And that has proven to be true, right? Problem is, international expansion is tricky and it does lead to cost. But I talked to investors. We went in for Germany. And why Germany? Well, look, the biggest cycling company in Europe is the Netherlands, right? But there's only 18 million people in the Netherlands. It's a comparatively small country.
Okay.
And then you've got Belgium as well, which is 10 million. So you can kind of get to 28 million people there. But actually, Germany is massively into cycling. It's not the same as the Netherlands, but it's pretty close.
Right.
And you've got 85 million people there and a massive middle class. And they love cycling. We went there, met the country manager. That's a whole story about how we met. But she was like, yes, it's going really well. When we actually started in winter, and it was going terribly wrong.
There's one season to pick this time.
Well, we kind of wanted to test systems,
Right.
but eventually we were like, this is really slow. We're spending money on marketing that's not going well.
Right.
And then we hit spring, and it just went bananas. And that was before we had minimum contract length. So it was going really bananas. And we were like, wow, we've this is the best we've done. Because remember, you come into this new country, and you've got that hard-earned experience of what works marketing-wise, what doesn't work marketing-wise.
Right.
And so you go and just so much better experience and run that. And yeah, so suddenly we're selling tons and tons of bikes, and that was going really, really well. Then we got to winter, and we had tons and tons of bikes coming back to us. so we were like, oh gosh, that's not gone so well. And so that's why in the next season we were like, right, tech, drop everything, build a 9-month minimum contract to get this in. We put that in, and it's kind of solved most of that challenge. But then we did Spain, right? So same thing. I met an entrepreneur. He was doing this in Spain. And I was like, that's cool. Let's go do that. Spain, better weather, one of the sort of great cycling nations. This should work really well.
Right.
We did these market research surveys. It's all freaking coming out higher than Germany, right? So it's like it was even better. But then we go there, we get there, we set this thing up. We do the same marketing playbook. The traffic to the website was like 5 times more than Germany and the UK.
Really?
Yeah, it's insane.
How come?
I think we just did well with the creative and everything and the deployment. But the conversion rate was like 0.06%. So it doesn't need it. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that's not simple.
Yeah.
And I remember my country manager was like, he was like, what are we going to do? So we tried lots of different things. And he was a great guy. He's now gone back to Chile and he's doing AI and really cool stuff. But he was super good entrepreneur because he wasn't like, we've just got to keep doubling down. He was like, I think we've got a problem here. I don't think we're getting product market fit. I was like, I don't think so either. Well, let's go. So we'll find a bike show. Let's go and actually meet some parents. Because that's what we did. When I first did Bike Club in the UK, I hand delivered the first 40 bikes.
Okay.
Which is a lot of driving. But you actually go meet customers and you sort of see their houses. You kind of get some feedback for it, which is really key, actually seeing a customer. customer or chatting to them.
Right.
Yeah, and then people like me, I don't know. It's always a bit awkward about, do I really want to go in some person's space?
Right.
But actually, you just got to go in there and start asking questions, and you start learning so much about why they use on the product, what's actually going on here. Yeah, that was quite interesting. But in Spain, we did the same thing in Spain. So I was going to do that.
Right.
I went down to Valencia, and which is a beautiful city. But I
Right.
remember it being a beautiful city because it was a very depressing trip. Because like I was there with my CMO, and we were just chatting to parents, and they're lucky they speak on English, like most people speak English down there. And it's just basically you could just see, yeah, cool idea, love it. But I don't really want a premium kids bike, and frankly, I just want to buy something cheaper. And so we're like, well, okay, so it's a pricing thing. And then we looked. Average annual household income in Germany is 49,000 euros. UK is 45,000 euros. In Spain, it's 23,000 euros. So basically, then looked at like Netflix actually is cheaper in Spain than it's the UK because for this reason. They sell their content for less. And so we were like, well, we put problems in physical product business. We couldn't do that. So yeah, we were like, no. So we shut it down. We wound it up, and it was sad. But I felt like if all the failures I've had, the thesis of Let's Grow Tan, that was also there. That actually was where we ran into trouble. But I think we were pretty disciplined about getting in and getting out, right? So it didn't cost us a huge amount in the end. We did have customers, so we had some every year. So that covered some cost. And so yeah, it was all pretty okay. Yeah.
Solid. Just want to double click a little bit more on the fundraising. So just understanding a little around the decisions around raising the capital that you ended up raising, and the timelines involved between raising that capital. Any advice you would share for the entrepreneurs tuning into today, potential aspiring folks, on how should they think about, raising, sort of how was that journey like for you?
I think it's pretty, obviously fundraising is I suppose what we've touched on there, product market fit, key, like making sure you can actually hire and inspire employees, that's key. The final one, well maybe not final, but other massive one is fundraising, right?
Absolutely.
I sort of often debate with other founders what is the definition of an entrepreneur, and I think it is applying capital resources to an economic opportunity, right? Because it's like business owners are slightly different, and I'm not saying that either of them are better, but I think that's specific or entrepreneurship. So look, fundraising is key. I think for me, I didn't really have any experience at start, so that was interesting. Trying to learn what the 1x liquidity preference cap was and all that.
Yeah.
First time out of the box.
Yeah.
But now I do. I know a lot about it. We ended up going with Codex Capital as our Series A partner. They came in with a really compelling offer, which involved bringing in a debt fund, and this business is critical to get debt funded. Then for Series B, we were able to attract Circularity Capital, who is a circular economy specific investor.
Fantastic.
And then you continue to work with Triple Point. Now, debt funding wise, I think the key is contracted return investment debt. Right. It comes in different names and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
The key is data. And it's not about fun equity stories and visions and lists and stuff. It's like data. How do they know they're going to get that contracted 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15% or whatever it is? Because I had other debt funds, debt providers before, super high costs, sell leaseback stuff.
Yeah.
But it's funny because they cost me a ton of money, but they actually got me off the ground. So I'm actually still really good. We paid them back, still good friends with them. I might work with them again. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you've got but on the equity side there, I think it's about expertise and really you shouldn't, because people talk about, I pitched 100 people and I had no no's and well, yes. It's like, but I'm pretty sure that 90 of those or 80 of those pitches were the wrong people you shouldn't be pitching, right? So I was pitching a venture capitalist yesterday actually, and got completely laughed out of the room because he's a friend, so it's fine.
Okay.
But he was like proper negative feedback, and that's fine. And actually super helpful because I also knew I was never going to get it because he'd set up a lending business that hadn't gone very well, and he learned tons from that. So when you go and pitch a lending business to someone who's had their fingers burned in lending, that's it.
They've got the memories.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to another venture capitalist he built a business in wealth.
Right.
He basically said to me, I'm going to miss the next big trend in wealth because I cannot invest in wealth businesses because whenever I look at a wealth pitch, I can't do that, right? So if you're a wealth startup and you go pitch him, he's just going to say no. And likewise with the other guy, go pitch a lending business, he's just going to say no.
Interesting. So question right there for you, when you go through a lot of rejections in general as trying to build something and pitching it to folks, how do you keep your mindset high? At what point do you take in the feedback and feel like, this might be worthy, maybe I should pivot or do something different? Or how do you keep the conviction within yourself strong that no, you believe in your own sort of idea and you want to stick to it.
Well, this is where, like, I don't know, like solo founders, I have no idea how they do that, right? There's some machines out there. You just keep going. I'm not one of those. It's fine because my partner was like, oh, why do you need a co-founder for this new business? I was like, well, because trust me, I need a co-founder. Like, I know what this looks like. And so I met this guy without Tim and I are now off trying to build this thing. Got another co-founder coming on board as well, which is pretty exciting. Why do I mention this? Because when you do get that negative feedback, you go you go and speak to your co-founder, you come out and you actually talk it through. If you're rational, not emotional, you can really find some real positivity in the negativity. Right? Because actually you got to go, well, what are they really kicking back on? Try and listen to it, right? And that's another one of my investors gives me that advice. Listen with 2 ears, James. Shut up. No, he's right. You should listen to it, and you hear this stuff. You can hear the negativity. You write it down. You say, well, what are my actual answers to this? And next time, these are my answers. And I think pitching is a sport, right? I'm a big cricket fan, and I'm guessing you're probably a cricket fan.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's like bowling, right?
Yeah.
You'd see even the best bowlers in the world have bad openers, right?
For sure.
You've just got to learn how to bowl and get better at it.
Absolutely. That was pretty well said. I think being cognizant of time, you've stepped back from your CEO capacity. We had a small conversation before the podcast about your new role, but I would love for the entire audience to hear about what you planning to build next. We're super excited to hear, as a second-time founder now, what you've set your eyes on. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, look, it's been an amazing journey at Bike Club. The greatest privilege of my professional career. You get an opportunity, you've got to go for it, right? And so had an amazing time building business across 3 countries, and yeah, some stuff's gone well, some stuff hasn't gone so well. That's kind of the story of it all. And so yeah, the one thing I've spotted is I'm still pretty into the whole family space. I really like finance. I didn't love physicality of Bike Club, right? Physical operations never quite got me that excited.
Capital intensive.
Yeah, capital intensive. Well, capital intensity, I'm about to try and start a lending business, which is also capital intensive, right? So let's make not touch on that. But look, I think that there's this, I still think that parents are looking for hassle-free financial services solutions. I think one of the big problems we have in the UK, a really big problem, is the cost of early years childcare. It's really prohibitive and often leads to really challenging, often marriage, stress-straining conversations where I can't go back to work because nursery is so expensive. And the government does something and it tries, but fundamentally the government doesn't have £40 billion to fund childcare, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a way that we can offer parents and nurseries a sort of fintech layer with a lending product that helps you spread the cost of nursery over a number of years, so you can get into that easier state school period, which I'm now into. It's much gentler on your wallet. You still have these kids. It's amazing. There's some other costs, but it's a lot less than the £2,000-4,000 I was spending a month on nursery. And if I could have the opportunity to be able to spread that cost out, that would be super helpful. And then I think on the other side, nurseries fundamentally need some kind of retail point of sale. Because if you look at every retailer or every service provider, if you have a finance option, it helps you sell more of it. And nurseries do struggle. They're trying to fill their nurseries up 4-5 days a week, which is all they need to do. So I think there's a really interesting space here, a real green space for us to go after. So we're going to go and explore it. And if it's all a failure, it's all a failure. I'm fine with it, right? So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm quite excited. I'm staying on as a net at Bike Club, and I'd be excited to be helping the guys. We've got a fantastic new CEO joining, leaving behind a amazing CFO and CMO and all that. So the team's there. It's going to be great to see what they achieve next.
James, I got to say that sounds extremely exciting. The fact that you solved for circular economy prior to this with Bike Club, and now you're going after such a massive problem. Which, I mean, Story sitting here as an audience, I feel like it's so inspiring to hear how you look at problems and how you're looking at real market gaps and fill them. So we at LBS are supporting and rooting and cheering for you and hoping that we're able to sort of make massive strides with the second venture coming up. Speaking of ventures, would love to get some advice for everybody on the podcast today, for anyone who's looking to start up. Anything that comes to mind in terms of something you should think about when you're building. Earlier on, we touched upon the conviction and the ability to pitch, but anything else you believe you should keep in mind, or something we should not do when you go out to build in the next few years?
I think I was talking quite earlier about the point of resilience, but I also think try not to get too emotionally attached to what you're doing. Okay, so you've got to be objective when you're going through this journey. Be as objective as possible. People can get really into coaches. You're going to talk about visions and all this sort of stuff. This isn't religion you're doing.
Yes.
That's this is economics, right?
Right.
This is finding those opportunities. I think just try and stay objective. Try and stand back, because it can feel like a failure if you pursue something and you've told your friends. I've just told your podcast with about this Nino thing I did, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cool, but I'm also quite clear. What if I start attracting tons of subprime borrowers, and that means the business just doesn't work, and so I'm not going to be doing that, right?
Right.
So, and that's not a failure. That's like you objectively saying this hasn't got the economics for me to go and waste it. And most of you guys here at LBS, just super highly capable people. You've got, your challenge is choosing what you want to do. You've got so many opportunities in front of you, right? And so, but I would recommend giving founding is a fun thing. It's a good thing to do. And however far you get down that road, like it can be, you'll get some decent experience. I love founding, raising capital and dilution and all that stuff, because it's kind of adjacent to institutional KPMG, James, right? So it's a bit more like that. Yeah. Other people, like I've got some mates, like I said, my first business partner, other mates who cannot stand investors, like basically would do everything they can to stretch out.
Yeah.
And they also have their basic businesses, but sure, their life. It's just a different game, right?
Yeah.
It's a real question as to what what do you want from me?
That's extremely valuable advice. Thanks for this, James. To wrap up, we've got a quick lightning round. The idea is to just sort of, whatever question I shoot, whatever comes first to your mind, you can just like sort of say it, and let's shoot with it.
Okay, go for it.
James, your favorite book?
The Honourable Schoolboy by John le Carré.
The best advice you got in life?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
favorite movie?
Favorite movie is Inception or Interstellar. The Christopher Nolan films.
Favorite sport and the favorite player?
I think my favourite sport's probably F1. I do love cricket, but my favourite player is very controversial for a British person, is Max Verstappen.
Oh, I love Max Verstappen. Let's go. We can end it right there.
Totally saying that.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in for the podcast. Hopefully, James here was able to inspire you to go and build something. James, thank you so much once again for being here with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.